On Monday, after attending my late night choir, I know how to rock and roll, I was sitting in the hostelry with a friend who goes to the choir, and he said to me, "Suzanne, it's all come round again, but I think I remember the first time being better." I said, "What on earth do you mean? It's all come round again, and you think the first time was better?" And he said, "Well, think about it. Top Gun is on at the cinema. Kate Bush is at the top of the charts. We're in a standoff with Russia, and we have a Conservative Prime Minister who's dividing opinion in the nation. And inflation is in double figures. I preferred the 1980s," he said, "the first time around." There wasn't a lot I could say to that. Before you think I am actually much younger than I am, I was 16 in 1990, so I can remember just about some of the 1980s. We are creatures who like to compare decades, aren't we? We like to compare the current state of things with the past, and generally the present comes off worse. Maybe because we have a rosy glow of how things were. Now, Darryl and I are off to Glastonbury next week as chaplains, and we went, was it 2019? And it was the first time I'd ever been, and it frankly blew my mind. And I think I'd probably forgotten the naff stuff. You know, the day it drizzled, or the putting the tents up, or the smell of the loos, or the way that I smelt by the end of it. And I'm slightly worried that, can it compare to that time? Am I going to be left feeling slightly disappointed because the music's not going to be so good, the atmosphere is not going to be so good, the team is not going to be quite so good, because I'm comparing it maybe with what I've got now as a kind of rosy glow of a pre-COVID experience. Sometimes nothing in our later years is ever as beautiful or vibrant or moving or sensual, pick your favourite adjective, as it was when we experienced it in our youth. It's a sort of generational snobbery, I think. You say to the youngsters, "Ah, but in my day, it was better than what you've got." Haggai is kind of facing the same snobbery. He asked the governor, the high priest, and the people, "Who of you is left who saw this house in its former glory?" In other words, Solomon's temple. "How does it look to you now? Does it not seem to you like nothing?" In the book of Ezra, which is quite interesting to read alongside, because Ezra and Nehemiah are like the story books, the history books, alongside Zechariah and Haggai, who are kind of the prophecy books, and they're all about the same time and the same place. But in Ezra, it says the people, when they saw the floor plan of the new temple and saw how small it was, they wept, because they knew it wasn't going to be as grand as Solomon's temple. So somebody who would have been about 70 plus in Haggai's day, which is probably quite rare, would just about have remembered the previous temple before it fell. But if they didn't, maybe they've been fed over generations stories about how great the temple was. I don't know if you've ever revisited somewhere that you went to as a kid. Have you ever been back to your primary school, or the road where you once lived, or the house you lived in when you were little? I had the pleasure of going back to my primary school once. And at that age, I thought it was huge. I mean, it was huge enough for me to get lost in, but then I get lost everywhere. But I went back and it seemed tiny. Of course, I was tiny, so the thing seemed big. But maybe it's not an unfair comparison. Perhaps this new temple is a massive aesthetic disappointment. They are in straitened circumstances. The post-exilic period cannot compare with all the riches of Solomon. So what's Haggai got to do now? He's got them going on the work, and now they're realising that it's not going to be quite the temple that it was. What do you do in that kind of situation? Throw your hands up and go, well, it's not going to be as good, so what's the point? No, Haggai shifts gear. It's really clever, I think. He goes from being a motivational prophet that gets everything started to some rather radical reframing. He doesn't sugarcoat the situation or dispute the memories of those who cherish the first temple. Never a good idea, I've learned, to dispute the memories of people who are, let's say, in their mature years, particularly if you were not there. You know, I remember having a chat with my grandmother before she died and saying, "Oh, Nana, your childhood seems so simple." And she said, "Yes, love, it was. But remember I had polio." So, you know, okay, I think I'd rather live now without polio and rickets and everything else. So he shifts things. And instead of getting them to look back at the past, he gets them instead to have an eschatological vision. It's posh words that, isn't it? Procrastination, eschatological. Eschatological basically means big time future, end of time future. So he says, yeah, okay, right now, don't look much. But at the end time, you just see what God's going to do. The latter temple is going to be better than the former. Or God is going to shake the mountains. He's going to bring all the wealth of the world together. It won't be like nothing. It'll be like nothing you've ever seen. So many places do comparisons with the past, but I do think churches are absolutely brilliant at it. I think churches have turned it into an art form. Oh, we used to have ... Sunday school. We used to have all the seats filled. We used to have perfect flower displays. We used to have ministers who knew how to preach and shut up in 5 minutes. We used to have activities every day of the week. We have dealt with cultural changes, the like of which other generations have not seen. And it's no generational person's fault, but the church has been on the back foot. How would it change if instead of looking back and doing that comparison, we compared it to what God's going to do, we know God's going to do in the future? We don't know everything about what the kingdom's going to look like, but we know there's going to be feasting. Yay, I like food. We know there's going to be joy. We know there's going to be justice for the oppressed. We know that the poor and the outcast are going to be welcomed and have a precious place. We know that there will be a multitude of people. We know that everything is going to be filled with light and filled with love. Haggai says there'll be peace. Oh my goodness. How the exiles must have longed for that, and how much we do too. If we look forward, we compare the now with the forward, doesn't that give you a little bit of pep? A little bit of energy to continue with the work? Because it may make sense in the bigger, longer scheme of things. Comparison in the future keeps us going, rather than comparison with the past that just defeats us. There's a reason why Dr. King had an I have a dream speech, because it captured hearts. I have a plan probably would not have had the same effect. But before that day arrives, Haggai says that they have the presence of God with them, and it's more than they need. It's the presence that sustains us, which guides us and protects us. In other words, Haggai helps the people manage their expectations by giving them a reminder of what's most important, God's presence. Actually, it's never about the temple. It's never actually about the building. And I've got to be really careful what I say right now, because we're just about to start on a redecoration project, aren't we? We have got months ahead of us discussing what colour of white we want on these walls and what colour carpet we want to kind of replace the front section here, and goodness knows what else. But do you know what, guys? It's not really about the building. It really isn't. It's always, always about the presence. The only bit of looking back that Haggai does do is not to remind them of Solomon's temple, but the time they were in Egypt, the time they were in the wilderness, when there wasn't even a land, much less a temple. And he reminds them, God was with you then, and you powerfully felt God's presence. You knew that the Spirit abided with you. So now you're in comfort, you've got your panelled houses, and you've forgotten. So you need the temple now to remind you, because you've forgotten. And then when later on and Jesus comes along and the temple itself has become a source of complacency, it's no longer the place where people encounter God and God encounters the people because of corruption and everything else. God says, okay, we'll do away with that. And his own Son becomes a place where we encounter God. God's own Son becomes the new temple. It's always about the presence. Takes on different forms, but it's always about the presence. In fact, Haggai says that whatever artists and architects can do or can't do, in the end, it's God who will build the temple with his own hands and bring all the splendour into it. So it's worth us hearing too. It's never about the physical building. It's never about how much we've got in our church bank account. It's never about the amount of people on the membership roll. It's never about the size of the Congregational Federation. It's always of whether we sense and we know the presence of God in our midst. Because if we strive without that joyful awareness of God, we're just going to get anxious, aren't we? We're just going to beat ourselves up. We're going to put all the effort in, and we're going to wonder why it's only this big and it's not as big as Solomon's temple, whatever that project happens to be. Everything becomes a chore that must produce big results. Yes, I'm not saying we sit on our laurels. We've got to meet God halfway, not procrastinate. But God always does the lion's share by his grace. All he asks is that we are aware of his presence. So the building was only to remind them that God was with them. And God was much, much bigger than even the grandest temple. If we can remember that God is in our midst, that God puts the splendour in, not us, we can then do what Haggai urges the people to do, to take courage, to work, and not fear. We just commit. The outcome is God's will. We need not fear. The outcome is God's will. We need not fear. We head hopefully in a Godward direction, but it's God's grace that takes us into that splendorous dream, not our efforts. The splendour, the presence is always his. Amen.
Amen.